episode 122 of Genn and Millie, where a Gen Xer and a millennial share the strength-based perspective through which they view the world. We are your hosts, Allison and Tess. Happy Friday, Tess.
Happy Friday, Allie.
We are now 2 episodes into the new year and we've been consistent.
Yes.
Fingers crossed we can keep that up for the rest of 2025.
It's not a high strength for either of us, so...
No, it's not.
No.
Which probably explains a hell of a lot of these episodes. And the wonderful tempo and cadence in which we not only try to figure out when we can plan them, but also the bebopping around that we do in the episode itself.
A little stream of consciousness braindump-y sometimes.
I was next to someone on a plane recently who said, you have a voice for, like, do you do podcasting or radio? You have a voice for it. And I laughed out loud and said, what? And yeah, I do.
Yeah, actually I do.
Right. And they were like, what's it about? And I said, you don't
need to know.
You don't need to listen. You don't need to listen. But hello, listeners, and I'm glad and grateful for those of you who do, and those of you who've been patient and stuck with us through 122 episodes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Today is an opportunity for recognition and celebration, and I'm hoping that you will stay with me in this test.
Yes.
I am abundantly proud of you, abundantly proud of your accomplishment, abundantly proud for a nameplate that exists in your office space now. I'd like to turn the mic over to you for you to share some really remarkable, amazing news.
I took my sip of coffee at the wrong time. I didn't know how long you were gonna. Sometimes your communication, it's a whole intro.
I'm trying really hard to just hold it. I'd like it to be your news to share.
Sure. I'm very excited to share with you all that I've accepted a faculty position as a tenure track assistant professor of sociology. So officially I have a job, and the job that I wanted, which is very hard to get right out of your degree. I mean, technically, I'm still in my degree, so very excited. It's a small liberal arts college in the Midwest, so giving me kind of my undergrad vibes, similar to Creighton, where I'll have small class sizes and more personal connection with students. I'll teach 3 classes a semester, primarily stats and research methods, and then a course of my choosing. And so this fall, I'm actually decided my course that I'm going to choose for fun, my elective I'm going to teach, I have entitled Sociology of Religion, Meaning, Myths, and Movements. And so I'm vetting kind of books and resources now, because I haven't actually ever taught sociology of religion, even though that's my main subdiscipline. So along with that, I finished a draft of my dissertation, so that's with my committee for edits right now, or with my advisor for edits. Then it goes to my committee, and contract is signed, discussion is underway around when and exactly where and things I'll be moving. So I'm gonna scope out some apartments when I'm kind of back in the Midwest in a few months for some personal things, and yeah, I am excited. I know there's a lot of work still left to do. Like, I still have to finish my degree, I have to defend my dissertation. I don't quite have don't have my doctorate yet, because I haven't finished my dissertation. A full draft is done, but it hasn't been successfully defended yet. So that's in the coming months, end of March, early April. But yeah, I mean, it's really crazy to be here. I mean, I knew that this was coming. I knew I would be finishing at this point, right? I for the last 6 months or so, like, I knew that I was on track to defend in May of 25. It's very different to be in this position anticipating the conclusion of my degree, anticipating earning my doctorate, while also now actually having a job secured. Like, I knew it was coming, but it was a worried, anxious type of fretting towards the end. And now that I know that I have a job, and not just any job, like, I ended up getting another offer just before I accepted this one, and I had also had an ask to come out for another campus visit for another university. So I had movements elsewhere. But to actually have a tenure track position with that kind of security at a university, at a college I'm really excited to be at, where I just felt really at home, really could see myself there for a long time. Like, that's just a very different position than the other offer I had extended was a visiting assistant professor position, which would have been a 2-year maximum contract. So I would have had to go through this process again in 2 years, and I didn't want that, but that's what a lot of people have to step into out of a PhD, because the market is so competitive and tough for positions. And with federal funding the way it is, and a lot of universities and colleges relying on Department of Ed funding, a lot of people are now adjusting their hiring processes. So a job I was really excited about and had a first round interview hasn't done second round interviews with any candidates yet. And a lot of that is because of they're uncertain about funding and if they can afford to hire a position. So there's, so a lot of things anyway. So suffice it to say, my news is I've accepted a position. I have completed a draft of my dissertation. I already knew and had already shared that I was reaching the finish line of my degree, but to be here and to be able to share that while I have been Professor Tess in an adjunct part-time way, I get to officially step into it as my formal title this coming summer, this next school year.
Dr. Starman.
Dr. Starman, yes. So, so I will share, I wasn't certain I was going to, but as a way to somewhat future cast and celebrate the current moment, when I accepted the position, I just ordered a little customized nameplate off of Etsy for fun from a maker where it says Dr. Tess Starman, Assistant Professor. So my title I'll be stepping into with, I teared up seeing doctor ahead of it. Just, I knew that would be coming. Like, I knew that would happen, but it's very different to see it in writing. Of course, it isn't reality yet, so that's the future casting moment. But yeah, it was.
I mean, of course, I always knew this would
we
be.
We knew it would happen. It's different to be here. Yeah.
Yes, and I think I love. So first of all, congratulations. I am so proud of you in 1,000 different ways around this accomplishment. And we talked about this last episode, where we met and how I got to know you, and then how I've been so fortunate to be part of witnessing your growth and your learning and the forever student in you, which is going to make you a hella teacher. And as you already are, and you have been to so many of us along the way before there was a title involved. But I love, number one, that we're doing right now today in this very moment, practicing what we know to be true about best practices around leadership, which is future casting. Yeah. And the symbolism of picturing tomorrow you. I mean, I think the things that we've learned from Gallup around hope, what we learned from Shane around hope, having that picture of future self. Yeah. And what we learned about mentoring. Like, those of us as mentors, we're constantly trying to help our mentees think about, what does future you look like? What does, how do you really craft that imagery? Yeah. So the future casting is one of the best practices that we know that great leaders, great teams do. Yeah. But also the celebration. Mm-hmm. In the midst even of times where it can be challenging to celebrate things, it is important to have recognition for dedication. You've overcome moments of adversity and challenge to get to this moment. What I was thinking about, and you won't love that I'm going to throw this at you, or you might with your adaptability. How do you feel like your strengths are going to show up now in this, now arriving at future pictured symbolism? Mm-hmm. How will your strengths show up now as opposed to maybe how your strengths have shown up in these other iterations and seasons of you? And I know, actually I don't know, because I don't ever ask you about the analytics of our podcast. I don't want to know. But if we have new listeners, do people understand, what the hell we're doing here? Mm-hmm. And the strengths lens in which we talk about it in the opening.
Yeah.
The strength-based perspective in which we view the world.
Yeah.
How does the nameplate that now contains your top 5 strengths, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, as a reminder, I lead with context, adaptability, strategic, learner, and individualization. And then connectedness, ideation, intellection, input, and empathy are my top 10. And I feel like, especially the early on in my PhD, I really got to lean on the thinking triad I have in my top 10, which is the learner, input, intellection blend. Especially my first year and a little bit into my second, because my entire job was to study. Like, that first year you had to learn all the fundamentals and then pass an examination of the fundamentals. And I got to be my most authentic, engaged, overworked, antisocial self that I've ever been. And it was such a delight. I didn't have to interact with people a whole lot. I didn't have to
It was such a delight.
It was such a delight. I didn't have to interact with people. I didn't have to get the energy to be
like
social. I didn't have to plan a whole lot. I didn't have to look presentable. I had classes 3 times a week. And, the other 4 days of the week, I didn't have to interact with anybody or do anything, and I could sit and study, which I needed to. I had to read 2 or more books a week, depending on the class assignments. I had to do a whole host of statistical analyses by hand and in software. And so I had to, that was just what my life was like my first 2 years. As I got more into the program and into my, especially into my work with my advisor and research, it definitely became more social. As I started teaching, I had to, of course, pull on that a little bit, and so that shifted my strengths quite a bit. I turned more to my relationship building themes, to learner as not this deep well of mastery, but this love of sharing what I've learned with other people. Learner as the teacher, which I think are 2 distinct yet very real definitions that encompass someone with high learner, both the learning to love and master things at a really deep level, that deep dive into content, but then wanting to share what you've learned, turning around and sharing that learning with other people. There's a sort of relationality to learner that doesn't get, I think, discussed too much because it tends to be kind of siloed into the thinking domain. And so definitely pulling on that, but also pulling on certainly my relationship building themes. I think most prominently would be number 5, which is my individualization. And I think that comes out so much that I'm very I have to set, of course, in a college course and in some of my courses, like my statistics course, I have 55 students in it. And so I can't treat every single person the same way, every single student, or I can't treat them all individually, I have to create some boundaries, some assignments, some guidelines, and most adhere to that. But there's certainly people who have situations in their lives that warrant customization, that warrant flexibility. And I am very forthright with students about the fact that I'm so amenable to them making adjustments. If you need some more time, I would much rather you give me better work than rushed work. If you need an extra few days to complete this assignment, or if you can't get this in on time, if you want to make adjustments to your plans, when I teach theory, I usually give students the option to write a final paper or do a final project. Do an audio recording discussing these themes, make a podcast, make a mind map, make a presentation, do something different and creative and fun with your content. That speaks more to sharing what you've learned rather than just reading and writing, if that's not your preferred method of learning. So that sort of customization, I think, comes out a lot. And I think what I'm really excited about stepping into in this new position is that some of the places I've taught while in my PhD program haven't allowed me, it feels like a betrayal of my individualization because I haven't gotten to know students as well as I would have liked to. There are some students in my stats class I don't know the names of, and that really sucks. because that seems like the most fundamental way of knowing another person is just knowing their name, right? And with 55 students, with, not a lot of people sharing with the full group, with only a handful ever coming to office hours to talk to me one-on-one or staying after class to talk to me one-on-one, there's a whole group of students that I know their names because they're in the grade book. I know the names of the people in the class, but matching the name to the right person is different. So I think that really solidified. I was like, I'll take any job because it's hard enough to get a job. But what I would really like is a job at a liberal arts college. And that's what I kind of expected going in. When I knew I wanted a faculty position after, that's kind of what I was looking for. But having more of an experience at a larger research-based university with bigger classes, it really cemented the fact that I really want that kind of job. So I'm excited to lean on that more, and certainly I think it's individualization plus that empathy blend certainly is something that pops up, especially when people share what's going on. I don't expect students to share the really hard things in their life with me. I'm their professor for one class, but I have had students share enough to know that really hard things are going on. So it's an easy yes to nullifying assignments or adjusting what the expectations are for that student specifically because of their unique situations. So I think those are the things that come to mind. I'm sure you've spotted more as I've shared.
Oh, I just want to be in your class. I want to go back to school. I just cannot help but name how lucky the students who are going to experience you in the sociology of religion space, how lucky they will be to have you as their professor. Mm-hmm. And the thing that came up for me, the question I had for you, Tess, is I've received some questions lately actually about adaptability and about adaptability as a relationship building theme. That's what Gallup has it tagged as. And by the way, I'll just state out loud 5,000 times over, it really frustrated me when they did the color code because I noticed people getting stuck in, I don't have relationship building themes, or I don't have this. Yes, even in the gift of the full 34, which more people are getting now than ever, I see people go right to the bottom and say, I don't have any empathy, or I don't have this. I could make a case for, and do all the time, for each of the 34, each being an executing theme and how you get things done, a relationship building theme and how you create and honor your circle. Each of the themes helps you to craft a plan. Each of the themes helps you as a leader. Yeah. But adaptability as a relationship building theme has always been, and I remember when the color codes came out, I was like, what? Because adaptability to me is the way that you think, and it's the way that you execute. So I would love, from your perspective, having adaptability number 2, how is adaptability a relationship building theme for you?
Yeah, I will say, before I answer that, I describe the domains as default, but not the only position. And so when you really recognize that reality, all of our strengths function under all 4 of the domains. And so one of my favorite activities, especially when I introduce the domains, I always ensure that I also give people the talent map to actually take a look at each of the 5 themes in their top 5 and discuss how they help them execute, lead, build relationships, and strategically think. And I'll include a screenshot of that activity for people just to do, but you can just do it on your own with notebook paper too, right? Think about each of the 4 themes and then walk through all of your 34 strengths or your top 10, your dominant themes and how they function in that way.
Before I introduce the domains, I do speed chat activities where I have people go around the room with different partners very quickly to say, how does this strength help you get things done? How does this strength help you build relationships? How does this strength help you create or craft a plan? How does this strength help you lead? And how does this strength help you show up as a team member? Yeah. And part of the reason I like doing that is it gets people aware of, yes, I get things done. Yes, I create and craft plans. And then when we come back together, I'll show the grid and say, when I asked you the question around how do you get things done, what strength did you share about? They will look and see it isn't always an executing theme in the way that they describe how they go about getting things done. So I think both, and gosh, wouldn't it be great if we were leading strengths workshops again together? Again, it's the different. I'm thinking about through communication and people telling their story in the way that I teach out the domains, and you are coming at it with a very logical, sensible, factual approach. And my woo communication just has to have them talking together.
I love that. That's good though. People learn a lot that way. I do a lot of think pair shares also in my teaching in small group sharing, because I know the power of that. Not know the power and know the power of it. Right. I know the power of it in my
heart
head.
Power, brain power.
Brain power. Yep. Okay, so adaptability, I will share from my own perspective how it functions as a relationship building theme, but I want to give some of Gallup's definitions first. So adaptability, the few sentence definition that they give is you prefer to go with the flow. You tend to be a, quote, now person who takes things as they come and who discovers the future one day at a time. So none of that, by definition, sounds relational, right? None of that, in definition, sounds relational. So some of these, and these are more my, I guess these are more my customized. I pulled up my full 34 report on Gallup.com. So some of these insights are customized that I'll share here, but I'll read a few that, driven by your talents, you may realize your quality of life improves when you're surrounded by the loveliness of nature or the artistry of human beings. It's very likely that you labor tirelessly on whatever needs to be accomplished today. You're willing to change your plans, though, when people around you change theirs. You ordinarily remain quite calm when people reverse their decision, modify their schedules, or cancel appointments. You're flexible and can quickly adjust to changing circumstances that upset or intimidate others. Your calm response to chaos reassures others and helps you respond to what people need. And I think some of those key definitions are really what stands true for me about why I can easily recognize why adaptability is defaulted to relationship building. Because yes, it helps me to do things, certainly. And it's interesting that you said it helps you think, because my instinctual response would be that it would be a thinking, or that it would be an executing theme, not a thinking theme. But also certainly a thinking theme, certainly a leadership theme. I think we don't appreciate enough adaptability in leaders. But its default in a relationship building theme makes me think back first to the imagery I have around my adaptability, that it's like a palm tree. That palm trees are incredibly, and I think this was originally from Micah Librant, and in a Theme Thursday she described it, and it really kind of embodied how I feel like my adaptability functions, which is, palm trees are incredibly, incredibly strong trees, that they have this insanely rooted core, but flexibility, that with hurricane winds and rains and storms, you can see them stretching so much so that the palm leaves can even touch the ground. That's how bent over they can become. But they're never, very rarely, uprooted, that they stay strong and consistent after the storm has passed. And there's something about that adaptability and that kind of last definition that I provided, that there's this quote, your calm response to chaos reassures others and help you respond to what people might need. And that, I think, is, it certainly helps get things done. It certainly helps you think about things, and it certainly can function well as a leader, especially in chaotic situations. But the default is that people gravitate towards that kind of calmness in the midst of chaos. That there's a stability, there's an anchoring, there's a rootedness in people with adaptability, which seems a little contrary to the term, right? But it's this idea that no matter what shifts around them, they can respond effectively. And so one of the things that I know we've talked about on this podcast, but if people are new, just as a refresher, people with adaptability, like this 2-sentence definition is like, you go with the flow. yes and no. Like, I
Right.
don't like things to be thrown at me. And part of that is also my other themes around it, that I have a unique adaptability that isn't really high energy. I feel like I see adaptability a lot paired with more influencing themes and maybe more high energy relational themes like positivity, or a developer, and those aren't how my adaptability functions. As more naturally, like it more functions with my thinking themes and other relational themes that are a little more subdued. But so in that way, some adaptability, some people with high adaptability might love new things thrown at them. They might really thrive in that way. And I can respond effectively to that. But I generally like some expectations and boundaries in what I'm approaching. Like, I don't like to approach things unknowing. And that's for sure, context is number one, I think, affecting that blend. That, like, I don't want to walk into something not knowing what to expect. I actually get kind of nervous around that. Like, if I'm going to meet someone in a new place, I have to look at the metro map or the bike lane routes beforehand. I look at the menu to expect what I'm probably going to pay for my, to think about it in my budget. Like I like to know what to expect. But if things change, I'm really okay. Like, really okay with things changing. Like, if someone needs to change plans or push back their time, like, as long as that's communicated with me, I'm really fine with that. If things are different than what I expected coming in, that's okay too. I'll respond to it, right? I'll roll with anything that might shift and change in the moment just fine. And it doesn't really perturb me. It might perturb me if somebody doesn't communicate that things have changed, right? Really throws me in blindsided to massive change, or doesn't communicate things up front. But in the moment, I can roll with it effectively. And the relationality of that is that most people can't. And you don't think about it, right? Your emotions run high, you get frustrated, you get concerned. I love, a really good example is I'm working with my best friend right now on throwing our other best friend a bridal shower. And I got this text from my friend the other day, and she was like, okay, we need to talk. I'm so nervous. I'm really uncertain. Like, I don't know if this person has enough decorations or what they're doing for the decorations. We haven't even talked about, like, juices or a mimosa bar. And I'm just like, oh, my friend, like, we will be okay. And so I just responded to each of her points, and I said we could ask, and there was one, she was like, our friend's fiance's mom was like, she had offered her help. She's like, I really don't know what to ask of her, and if we ask of her to bring things, will she have to come early, right? And all of these things, and immediately, this is probably adaptability, strategic blend, I just responded to each point. I was like, we can ask her to bring the juices, and she can store them at her place because she'll probably have space. She lives down the street from our friend, so we can go swing by and pick those up the morning of, so she doesn't have to come to the place early, right? Like, just responding to each point with calm, measured, reassured comments. Like, we'll be just fine. Like, we have resources, we have support. It's going to be great. Even if there are hiccups that go on, we're still there to celebrate our friend, right? So, and that the way that I was on the phone and via text talking with her, so I didn't see her, but the way I could feel emotionally, like, this really high buzz of anxiety just slowly dwindle. Like, we're okay, yes. We're fine. We have what we need. It will be okay. We can ask for help. It's going to be a great day regardless. Like, that sort of calm response, that calm in the chaos, I think was really kind of helpful as her mind was spiraling. And that's the relationship building gift I think that adaptability brings.
I describe it often as providing psychological safety. It provides psychological safety for others. It remains strong through a storm. Yeah. The assurance of it will be okay from a leader with high adaptability provides psychological safety for others on the team, like me, who have higher anxiety about the things not going as planned. I want to go back to, and I love that you have always referred to it as a palm tree, as many name cards as you made. I was thinking about how your learner, I know you heard that reference from Micah, that you continue to name it, that you continue to use it, your learner, your student, but you're also teaching, and you're teaching that imagery out. Mm-hmm. But then the artistry of human beings, is that not sociology or what? The artistry of human beings. And I'm constantly asked, well, because my woo and communication has me in places where I get to introduce myself quite often and meet new people. Yesterday, I've been trying to think of the term for this. When meeting doors close, opportunities to ski windows open. So I've been reminded I'm not supposed to call it practice, but I do call it, if I can find time to practice skiing in between skiing. And Danny's like, it's not called practice, it's just called skiing, Allison. But I love going by myself. And I think part of the reason I like going by myself is that, number one, I'm not very good yet. And I'm surrounded by people who are good skiers. So in order to get better at this, I've got a lot of making up to do. So I don't want to hold people back when we're skiing. Sean and Shanna are great skiers and snowboarders. Danny's a great skier. I don't want to hold people back. Yeah. So I have to find these places to practice. I also realized that a year ago, I just learned how to ski a year ago. I did most of my learning by myself. So it's become kind of this sacred space of where the original learning happened. I want to be able to do more of that. So yesterday, meetings got canceled. And I was like, I am absolutely going to take this opportunity of this day and get up there. I left at 6 a.m. so that I could be up in the parking lot early. I like to ski early morning if I can, before it gets, to be quite honest, before I have to walk further in my ski boots in the parking lot, because they are painful on my shins. And I like to take as little as possible. So I just go, get on the lift, ski a bunch of runs, and leave. So my favorite part of going, so I go to Keystone, which is not everybody's favorite but mine, because that's where I learned. And I go to a green called Schoolmarm that's like, I think a mile-ish, maybe 2 miles long. And I can do these like really easy in and out. I'm surrounded by children, you know, no one's going to speed past me, hopefully, on a green like Schoolmarm. And I can just go over and over and over. And then I get on the gondola, go back, do it again. Yeah. My favorite part, I realized yesterday, is the gondola. Because I'm by myself, and they have 2 separate lines. They have groups and they have singles. So I get in the single line, and I get put in most often with a group. And then I just get to chat it up in, I don't know how long it takes, 5-8 minutes to get up to the top. And I did like 8 runs yesterday. And I had some of the most amazing conversations in the gondola ride. And so people, you know, I, of course, start chatting it up and saying, you know, something. I usually apologize for my awkwardness because I drop my poles. I'm fumbling around with my skis. I don't know what I'm doing. So I usually do that as an intro, like, hey, sorry, you know, knocked you with my poles. If you can't tell, I'm new here. And so you'll see me drop my poles like 16 more times, and you'll find me on the green because I don't know what I'm doing. And always, I mean, people just love to be heard and love to be considered an expert. And they're like, oh, are you new to skiing? Every single time. I'm like, yep, I'm new to skiing, just started last year. Wow, that's amazing. And then it leads to, what do you do? So I introduce myself as a consultant, and they say, oh, you know, what do you do consult on? And I'm like, yeah. People. I am fascinated with the ways that people show up in the world. The artistry of human being. Maybe now, going forward, the way that I say, I actually study the artistry of human beings. But then I got into, of course, they're like, oh, like with teams. And I'm like, yeah, I do workshops and retreats. And people love the opportunity to say, oh, that must be this. I mean, people just love to be considered the expert. And I remind you all, listeners, and you, Tess, you are the expert of you. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason I wanted to dive deeper into adaptability is I don't want to make assumptions about that strength on anybody. I don't want to make assumptions about anything about anybody. You are the expert of you. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as I'm hearing you speak to each of these, I'm hearing I always hear your context. Like the globe behind your head, the way that when we traveled, you had both intuitive and actual maps. You context is what you lead with, and I think it very much adds to the color of each of your strengths, like any of them do when it comes to blends.
Yeah.
But your ability to remember how you learned about adaptability it's like, I know you have like these sort of maps of how you got to today that are stored right here in your brain at any given moment. And when we started this conversation about what a blissful time it was to be away from people, it's like you're the endless sort of almanac, map, thesaurus, like every reference book I can think of. And in every one of our conversations, there are many books behind you in aesthetically pleasing order. I love how these dialogues help me think more about my strengths and what season I'm in. So I lead with, for listeners who are new to the podcast, I lead with input, communication, strategic, woo, and empathy. And I couldn't tell you the 6 through 10 because I don't remember. I know I have achiever. I know I think I have positivity. I think I have individualization. Connectedness. Yeah, I don't really know.
Always
but
neglect that one.
I love that in this season of my life as a consultant, I am using my strengths so very differently. Yeah. In this season as a mom, I am using my strengths very differently. In this season as a friend, in this season as a partner, in this season as an explorer of the world, I am using my strengths very differently. I, in my turning 50, I was very fortunate to have, my friends at Wild have gifted me they've commissioned an artist to create an archetype collage that honors me. And so she sent me a list of questions, like a kind of a questionnaire, and then we had a Zoom call. And when I got to meet the artist, who is so talented, by the way, she said, Allison, the very first question is favorite mantra, and you are my first person ever to answer with questions. My mantra are the 3 questions.
What do you need?
No, it's not those questions. It's, is this true? What might be the why? If not now, when? And those have become my guideposts. That's my mantra. Like she goes, it's very interesting to me that you would respond to that. What's your mantra? With actual questions. And I was like,
That's who I am.
So I said,
Allison.
Right. I go, and then throughout the questionnaire, it's all about questions. It's about, I love the questions. She asked what my style was. And the 3 words that I used to describe my style were minimalist, hippie, and clumsy. And she said, could you tell me more about clumsy? And I said, I love, at this season of my life, owning awkward. And I was thinking about my strategic is certainly not clean or precise. My strategic is a mess. When I teach, I'm kind of messy. When I write, I'm kind of messy. I love a good dry erase board because I just make a big mess. I am clumsy and awkward. So this season of my life in which I get to interact with a lot of individuals and teams and even the great people that I met on the gondola yesterday, my input is still passionately curious, but now in much more rooted way. My communication is much more curious in the way that I'm listening and slower to respond. My strategic thinks about different pathways as it always has, but I think it's also now thinking about the pathways of the future for me at the ripe old age of 50. And then my woo and my empathy, I am in love with the artistry of human beings.
I think it's it's so beautiful how you laid that out, and I think it emphasizes something that both of these examples have attested to, and I feel like is sometimes an under-recognized reality of strength. Like there's, I think, an assumption because of what personality assessments are that when your life changes, so do your results, right? And, Gallup's research says, no, your inherent talents are your inherent talents through all seasons. And so it doesn't mean that your strengths change. Like you might have some shifting. I'm certain in my first and second year in my PhD program, intellection was number one. When I took it in 2014 as an intern with teammates in a bunch of classes at Creighton, like it showed up as number 8. So, those things shift, your dominant themes shift around quite a lot, but they generally remain the same, especially your top few, because they are so strong and innate in how you respond to the world. And so it doesn't mean that our strengths change when our lives change and when we seem like different people. It's that we're tapping into different realities, or they're showing up differently, or as I mentioned, the multifaceted nature of both adaptability but also learner. I could talk about the multifaceted nature of all sorts of different strengths, and you and I are a good example of that because your strategic looks so different than mine does. Yours is a little more chaotic and twirly, and mine is a little more, let's process this through a proof philosophically. Point A, yes. Point B. If yes. not A, then C.
Yes.
Yes. We logically, linearly walk through reality. That's how mine works, which looks very different from your strategic. And so all of our strengths are multifaceted, and those different facets show and shine differently in different contexts of our lives when they're needed. It doesn't mean that we all of a sudden don't have those strengths, but that they just show up differently and emphasized differently.
They showed up immediately this morning. I could hear kind of a ruckus outside my apartment door, and I was like, what the hell is going on now? I've been somewhat frustrated with the space that I'm in as of late, but I'm not here very often, and it works. But I could hear kind of a ruckus. So I peek out the door, whatever you call that thing. The visual that I have on the peephole. God, gross. I don't even like saying that word.
Why? Why did you choose that one?
I don't know. What do you call it? Peep? Any hoodle. I don't know what you... The door.
Window? The door, yeah, like your sliding glass.
Well, no, it's a little tiny...
Oh, yeah.
Peephole.
I guess, peephole would be
so gross saying that. But anyway,
that's weird. There's got to be...
I looked out, and I could see there were a bunch of firemen out there, and I was like, whoa, what's up? What's happening? So I swoosh open the door, and I say, oh, hello. And they all look at me. There's like 6 of them in the hallway, like right outside my door. And I said, is something wrong? And they said, no, we're just doing a training exercise. And I said, I said, awesome. So I made up an excuse as to why I needed to go down my 3 flights of stairs to my garage because I wanted to see what was happening. And so they're like, hey, watch out for the hoses. Look out, don't trip over everything. And I stopped and I said, oh, let me tell you, if anybody's going to trip over anything here, it's me. And they kind of laughed, and I said, no, for reals. I said, but I'll do my best. And I said, what's this about? What are you training for? I just immediately start with engaging, asking questions. It's time to chat. And I'm sure they were like, well, we chose
to do our job.
Right. We chose the wrong place to do this training exercise. But then I came up the steps, and as I said, thank you, and thank you for everything you do, and I'm glad everything is okay. I shut the door, and I think, this happens all the time. Wherever I am, it happens all the time. I just cannot hold my words of noticing in.
Yep.
And it's become a running joke with Danny. It's been a long time joke with my kids. Something starts to happen, and Danny's methodology is to tap me on the leg, which is no, please do not engage. And I have a tendency, which I'm sure I've spoken to this on the podcast before, but I engage when he calls mentoring opportunities for him on his behalf. In situations where I'm like, you know what? You guys should connect. And he's like, please do not do this to me. Yeah. So Lauren and Sean do more of a no, Mom, out loud. They don't, there's no tapping. There's no visual. They're like,
anymore.
No, like, Allison, actually, no, not going to, no thanks. But actually, my connectedness, because you say I never name it, I think my connectedness now in this season of my life, I can't wait to introduce people. I can't wait to broaden. Like, you should know this person and you guys should connect because this would be a magical thing if you work together. I see my connectedness less as the seasons or my paying attention to the new moon, the full moon, the planets in alignment, the season of Aquarius.
Wild, because that was so your connectedness for so long.
I think it's more practical and logical as to how two human beings coming together could make a business happen or could make a project happen. So
that's great.
In honor and recognition of you reminding me that I never named my connectedness.
Oh, I appreciate it. Okay, so for our learning knowledge, the people in the door is called a peephole, but also called a peek hole, a spy hole, a door hole, a magic mirror or door viewer, or magic eye, which is going to be my preferred term for it.
Okay, magic eye. Magic eye. Can you go back and fix where I said peephole and say magic eye? I used my magic eye to see this.
Oh, well, let me take the clip here. You say magic eye and some. No, I'm not going to do that. You know that.
I used my magic eye to look out into the hallway.
People would be like,
and
what
see.
A magic eye.
Well, it's not don't confuse it with my third eye, which is intuition. But my magic eye looking out into the hallway.
Connected.
Magic eye.
Yeah, write that down. Oh my gosh. Okay, what a lovely conversation. Okay, I think what I want to ask of listeners is to conduct their own kind of talent map assessment. Take a look at their top 5, their top 10. Even if you've done this before, I've done this plenty of times, and I feel like I always learn something new or come to some sort of connection in my brain that I hadn't before when I engage in this practice again. So each of your top 5, your top 10, your dominant themes. Apologize for my pug in the background who has no chill.
Please don't. Please don't.
I did send you a photo, FYI, of him throughout the whole episode. And
he's also, I mean, let's talk about George's strengths. He's got strategic. He has strategic because he is, Tess is on. Tess is on the mic. So right now is the time in which I shall show up.
Yeah, I sleep 23 out of the 24 hours of a day, but let me be wild the 1 hour that she's recording audio to put on the internet. Yeah. Thankfully, he was chill most of the podcast and sleeping his chair, but yeah. So walk through that, right? Your dominant themes, however you define that. Your top 5, your top 10. I consider mine 1 through 11, so I'm going to go through this practice myself and respond to I like how you phrase those questions, Allie. Will you run through them again for people, how you did the questions on the domains?
What the hell did I say?
The questions you ask people
the speed chat. Speed chat questions. God, I thought you wanted me to name the questions about how we revisit our top 5 in this season. I'm like, what did I say? I have no idea. It's so interesting. I was doing a sidebar. Someone had reached out to me. They're starting their own coaching and consulting business. And she said, can I interview you? I have some questions for you. Like, what are your best practices? And I said, so I just off the cuff listed what my best practices are, and she wrote them down. And I said, would you send those to me? Because I could probably have those.
I didn't really know what they were.
Right. But I love that my communication just on the fly lists them, but I should have them written down somewhere. Anyway, the speed chat questions. How does this strength help you get things done? How does this strength help you build relationships? How does this strength help you lead? How does this strength help you create or craft a plan? And how does this strength help you show up as a team member? So the 5th question is a bonus, not related to the domains. But I do like that question of how does this strength help you show up on a team? Because it has people thinking more broadly, not just how they go about individually doing things, but how they show up as a team member.
Yeah, it's cool. So walking through each of those 5 questions with your dominant themes or top 5, I think getting some more language, some more connections around how our themes move beyond their default position in kind of the typology of the domains from Gallup. And then second, I think big thing, and Allie, add anything you want to here. Second thing to ask of listeners, I think, is how are your strengths showing up differently for you now in this moment versus a different season of life? If your life has looked similarly now, chart back 5 years ago or a year ago, right? A lot of changes happened in our world recently. We can do a before and after certain moments in time. They don't just have to be different seasons of your own life, but different seasons of life in general. So how are your strengths showing up differently now than they were at a previous point in time? It's just giving some more language and thoughtfulness to how our strengths evolve along with us.
And then I have a request of our listeners. I think sometimes it's hard for us to know who's listening and if you're gleaning from it. But I would love for our listeners in the spirit and methodology of hopefulness and optimism and the teaching of Viktor Frankl, I do think it's important that we name what we're celebrating right now and what we are excited about in the future. I know I name Shane a lot here, but I think about him all the time, especially when things are hard. Hope is just the idea and energy that we have about the future. And so what are you celebrating right now? And what are you thinking excitedly about for the future? And I am most excited about Dr. Starman and the students that are going to be so lucky to be learning from her, inspired by her, influenced by her. And so I would love for our listeners, you would have to go to the Instagram and comment, because that's our methodology in which you can do that here. But go to the Insta and name something that you are celebrating.
Yeah.
And if it's congrats, Dr. Starman, that is more than enough.
Oh my gosh. Wow. You were something, Allie. Appreciate you. With that, we want to thank everyone for tuning in to episode 122 of Genn and Millie. If you enjoyed today's conversation, consider sharing this episode with a friend. To interact with us and share your responses to the questions we posed, give us a follow on Instagram at Genn and Millie. That's at GENNANDMILLIE. Until next time.